Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is definitely a different kind of event than I'm used to. I'm used to tech conferences that are a lot less sexy than this, so this is fantastic. And the other thing that's really different about coming onto the stage is that we were all just sharing a tactile sound experience, which I highly recommend afterwards. And Maral will talk about that in a bit, because she is the creator of this thing, which you will discover in the course of this talk, and also by trying it out yourselves afterwards. So my name is Natalie Monbiot, and I'm going to be the host of today's panel. And the topic is Beyond Perception, Blending Mediums. I'm a long-time emerging technology and media strategist, currently focused on the world of virtual humans. And I'm absolutely delighted to moderate this panel featuring 6 pioneers in different areas of design, starting with the most material end, hardcore architecture, all the way through to the more ethereal end for the purposes of today's conversation with Manoj over there. We're a lot of people. We're going to try and run a tight ship here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce each panelist and with a first question. And as you can see, everyone's social media handles are up here. So if you're not familiar with these panelists, you should definitely follow them. And also there will be drinks afterwards, so you can chat in person. And I'm sure this conversation will fuel a lot of conversation starters. So without further ado, Ben, you're representing the most material end of our design spectrum today. You are an architecture reporter, and you are also the editor of the preeminent de facto design magazine, DeZeen. So my first question to you, which I will be asking each panelist, is how is emerging technology shaping architecture today? And share some examples with us.
Yeah, I think that it's shaping it in a bunch of different ways, and I think we'll get into some of the ones that I'm not a fan of later. But what I'm most interested in is kind of how it's shaping efficiencies. So a lot of this beautiful exhibition that we've been shown is taking these kind of ancient methods and techniques and crafts and bringing them into a contemporary technological form, right? And one of the things about when you used to build buildings, you were working with limited supply chains, like smaller resources, so you had to be really, really crafty with what you were doing, right? It wasn't always just, usually where you were was formulating it, but now we have these massive supply chains. They're super unsustainable. They're, really built for profit a lot of times for some of the bigger projects. So I'm really interested in some of the firms that are trying to use AI to reduce waste and efficiency to create, more sustainable things, because the global economy is so complex, it's so bloated in some ways that so much inefficiency happens. A lot of it's driven from those perspectives. So cutting down waste through efficiency, through logistics. There's some firms who have been doing this for decades through other means. I know Shop Architects has a system for tracking other materials. ZGF in Portland has ways that they're tracking the sustainability of all the wood products they're using in their projects. So taking those already pre-existing computational systems and putting them into something that can maximize efficiency, and then also, of course, like pump out more efficient geometries and structural integrities. Yeah.
Great. So a lot of efficiencies in the process, and it's he sort of hinted that he is going to be the cynic on the panel, which you always need. And of course, we're not just all techno optimists here. We will get to some of the things that emerging technology is not doing, or doing poorly, or under delivering in a way with these design projects. But next up, we have Sofia Hagen, who is still towards the material end of our design spectrum. And Sofia actually started off in the architecture realm with Zaha Hadid, and has since started her own design studio and focused on smaller designs using, sustainable doesn't even start to kind of describe what it is you're doing. So I'm going to just leave it to you to do that.
Thank you very much. Also, very good intro from both of you. Actually, I can really take the path from here, because I moved from architecture to smaller scale of design, and I mainly focus on 3D printing using different kinds of robotic fabrication and biomaterials or recycled waste materials that can otherwise not be used. So for me, technology is very important in my practice. It really drives the design process. Like, I work hand in hand with material scientists across the world and also fabricators across the world, which ties in nicely with what Ben said. The supply chain is local. So both the material sourcing is local, and so are the robots. The models are done by me, the 3D models, so I can also be wherever I want to be, really.
You also get to do the fun stuff still, which
Yes.
is, you know, obviously part of the game.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to give that away just yet or ever.
And we should say that Sofia is actually exhibiting tonight. She has a meditation bench, which might be over there.
It's over there. It should still be there, yeah.
Do you want to just describe what's going on with this meditation bench?
So this is the world's first meditation bench made of 3D printed sugar. You can't eat it. I mean, you can try, but I wouldn't recommend it. And it's the sugar is turned into a bio-PLA, so it's a non-toxic organic plastic, which is also biodegradable, but it's fire retardant, UV resistant, waterproof. And then, as you can see, it has LED lights in there, which can be programmed, so you can do chromotherapy or, you know, dim it as you like and use it for your meditation practice or just as a seat, however you like, or a light.
Multi-purpose. So next up, getting sort of moving, kind of straddling the material world and the ethereal world, which pretty much describes you, I think, Marat. I've known you for almost 15 years at this point. So you have raised the Morale Studios, and you are a long-time collaborator as well with Kelsey, and actually responsible for a lot of the designs and that vibrating experience behind this wall. So can you tell us about your focus in your design and in your designs and how sensorial technology plays a role in the experience?
Thank you, Natalie. I classify myself as a sensory artist, and really what I try to do is bridge a connection between the experience or the work and the human body. So it's really about using tech and finding ways to get within the body. And what we've been working with recently is, you know, a lot of haptic works, which is utilizing frequency and being able to access the tunes and the rhythm of the body. So tuning into the rhythm of your body is something that we, you know, have to, it's a constant. It's not like you master this and then it's done. Like, here we go, I've done this, you know. It's something that is, it's a process. And so finding ways to tune into the rhythm of your body is, you know, there's methods of, you know, breathing and meditation and various exercises that you can do with oneself. But I've been embedding this kind of ideology within the products themselves, and so you get to experience the works within your home or within an experiential setting like this, and just tune into yourself, you know. And it's really just about that, and it's about a feeling that you're able to access. And utilizing tech has been, you know, we've seen profound results just because you're able to sink into this space. You wouldn't know that this tech is embedded in the chair. So, yeah.
And the great thing is, might sound like a sort of conceptual thing, but as I said, you can all actually try it tonight. So enjoy that special experience. So moving on to Kai. So Kai has spent the last 20 years in the entertainment space. He started off as the manager for Snoop and has since worked with a lot of different creators. He has been working at the intersection of entertainment and technology and has been an early adopter or early pioneer in new fields like esports. The question, there's so many things that you could talk about. The question that I have for you is actually taking us to the present day in a conversation we had previously, which is around AI and how you've said that what AI can do is it actually can kind of materialize what's in your mind's eye. So if you could speak to that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I can feel the chair on back there, I think that, yeah, so that's good. Yeah, the vibrations are good right now. I spent 20 years in the entertainment business. my mom's a pioneering visual effects supervisor from the 80s and 90s, so I got to hang out around a lot of computer scientists and CG artists and stuff like that, and watch my mom be a boss in Hollywood, which was cool. And so now I think technology just isn't something that's, I think, abrasive to my psyche when I'm making businesses or creating, certain situations with content creators or talent or musicians or actors or actresses. So yeah, so that's a little bit of my background. And as far as, I think the way, we've been picking up these tools to create, as far as our business, I have a venture studio called Future Studios. We invest in IP and companies with content creators and help them become founders, and we co-own those businesses with them. So it's just been an amazing tool to bring a lot of those concepts to life on a very simple level, actually. Sometimes just taking like traditional decks where you're trying to like get people in a room that might not have the best imaginations, you know what I mean? But these are the people you're pitching to and you need resources from and stuff like that. So, AI is a really good tool to take decks, bring your ideas to life, and make a mini movie instead of having to sit there and go through 15 slides, you know what I mean? You get to actually bring those things to life and show someone a 2-minute, 30-second sizzle on like what your vision is. And that's been really impactful, and it's just one of the ways we've been creating more modular infrastructure for the talent we've been working with. So there's more like operational capabilities that we provide, technical abilities through AI, and also game engines. Game engines are a really important way to create more robust user-generated content. And creative as well. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. So just kind of continuing on that theme of kind of robustness and AI helping us to kind of imagine things before we make them. Kelsey, you're the founder of Mother Games and the Le Zoo game, and House of Mirrors, who is your co-host of tonight, which is in her game, Le Zoo. So Kelsey, how do you use AI and machine learning to kind of help you accelerate how you build out these experiences in the games, and what benefit does that reap for you?
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. Oh, this one's now it's on. Thank you, Natalie. Yeah, I think it's been a real pleasure to work with my co-founder. I have two co-founders, Haisa Chagas, who is here in the audience, and Nikita Antonov. And one of the ways that we have been utilizing AI is by writing our own models and essentially taking a corpus or a pile, if you call it a pile of knowledge, and training our own models on that knowledge so that, for example, we can do a draft of content together or a draft of the storyline of the game using a co-writer, if you will, but the co-writer is educated on the same material that I am educated on or other writers within our lore team. And so you actually have this kind of back and forth co-creation process, with a machine, similar to how you would with ChatGPT, for example, but this is a custom trained model, custom created for the storyline within the game. And the reason that is, one of the methods that we're pursuing is because in today's time, when you think about all of the projects that you could spend money on, there's so much that could be created in the world. And having come from the tech space and then ultimately in the movie space, I was like, oh my gosh, there is just money bleeding everywhere. And I really feel that one of the benefits of working with AI is not, it's that you can be more efficient with the capital that you do have. We are a startup. We don't have money out the wazoo. And so we can start to create a prototype of something and understand where is this going. And one of the other ways that we've been using AI is to create basically an emergent game engine that allows for personalization. And so games are one of the most efficient methods to change the way that your mind works. If you've ever struggled creating a habit, games are 20 times more efficient in creating a new neural habit in your brain. And so it becomes an opportunity that it's not just a mass market game that is creating, hyper-realistic first-person shooter games. That's not what we're doing. We're thinking about how can we create a personalized AI layer in the game that allows you to go through those repetition loops of play. of discovering yourself, of learning how do I interact with, a nemesis, or how do I interact with a reality that feels like something I created. So I think, bottom line, we're creating a platform or a foundation that allows us to iterate quickly and efficiently, while simultaneously delivering a personalized experience for the purpose of, changing the way that we see the world. Yeah.
And at the same time, freeing up capital, freeing up attention and creativity to put on events, I guess, like this, which you might not otherwise have time for.
Yes, that's true. Yes. Time.
Manoj, for the purposes of today, you are all the way at the end on our ethereal end of the design spectrum. Very spiritual and ethereal and mental, apparently. So Manoj, you are a meditation teacher and a writer and the co-founder of a mindfulness platform called Open, which operates across the physical and digital spaces. On your Instagram, as people will discover, you talk about consciousness and culture. And from my experience of Open, that's absolutely kind of what it feels like. It feels extremely relevant to the moment that we're in now. Can you describe sort of so far, like how you've seen emerging technologies in the build-up of Open up to today, and how you see AI playing into the future of Open?
I've just got to wake up a bit. I'm falling asleep from that machine next door. Might have to do some rounds of breath work before we begin. No, I think it's a really interesting conversation thus far, and following on from what Kelsey just said, personalization is the future of meditation practice, of mindfulness practice, I will say. To this point, I think it'll get you to a certain place within your own practice, and I'm probably in the cynical side with Ben there at some point. But what we're seeing is, originally when a teacher was about to teach a class, go into a practice, they had to come fully prepared. They had to have X amount of years of study, they had to have an idea of what they were going to guide the class through, hope that the material that they were going to guide the class through was relevant, and that it was somehow going to land within the consciousness of the person receiving it. But what we're seeing through the app in particular is that, especially with the integrations with Aura, Whoop, all these different ordering, all those sorts of things, we can tell what you're feeling as soon as you join the app. There'll be integrations soon they'll tell us what someone's feeling, what they're going through, and based on that, we're able to personalize and generate a particular. Oh, sorry, cool. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. And then we're now able to generate something that that person needs at that moment. And it's objective. We know exactly this person hasn't slept well, 4 hours of sleep. Bang, here is something that we can give you based on the fact that you might like a South African voice by a female. And it's there on your app, ready to go. So that's one aspect of it. We're on the cusp of that at the moment. But what'll probably follow that is more hyper-personalization with coaching. I maybe am one of the last people of the world of meditation that had to travel really far to go and find a teacher that I could sit with for years and years and years and try and decipher what he was teaching me. But now, through coaching, we're able to answer questions that the student might have based on when they logged out of the meditation practice, or really quick feedback after a class. We can jump in and say, hey, what were your issues? They can, with one click, tell us what they were, and there can be an AI coach that can help them with that answer. So yeah, it's a new place for us, and we still have a lot of questions. And for us, Open was an ongoing exploration. And so I think AI for us as well will be an ongoing exploration between the ethics of that within the space of spirituality and the benefit of that from a mental health perspective.
Super interesting. So it sounds like technology up to this point has helped kind of connect with people on a more deep and personal level so they can connect with their practice, and also has democratized access to meditation teachers. People don't have to travel miles and miles to find one. So on that note, we are going to get into this theme of democratization, because I think this is something that we've all felt emerging technologies within different fields of design has enabled. So Moral, one of your designs actually recently won Miami Design Award, which is incredible. Also, quite a rarefied thing to achieve. This one incredible design, has received all of this recognition. How do you think about democratization, in your work in R&D of your designs to reach more people?
What I'm mostly passionate about is research and development, and I like to say that I have a medium agnostic approach to my work. Like, I don't work in one medium. It's always something different, and it's constantly shifting and evolving. And that really is just because of the sense of curiosity and like just wanting to learn new things and like not wanting to get stuck in one thing. In this process, like especially with the haptic works, which we were just talking about, I think it's really about iterations. So, it's about creating a piece, learning how it works, and then figuring out how to optimize it to make it more accessible for people. And that means not only like finding the tech, but figuring out, or the pieces, all the parts that go together. It's not really only about tech. It's really about all the parts that come together to make that piece and make it as best as it can be and make the experience as best as it can be. And so these different iterations of it, like, we started with the Caterpillar, for instance, which is the piece that got a lot of recognition. And it's great that it has all this recognition, but people really love it and they want to have it, and it's expensive. So then how do we make it more accessible? It's, creating a new design and trying out new tech and trying out new materials and seeing how it works and then seeing how people receive it. And then trying that again, and then doing that again. And like, this is, I think, the 5th or 6th piece that we've created. The pieces that are here today, it's called Onda, and it's kind of geared more towards gaming and entertainment, and just something that's going to be available in more homes, and maybe you'd have multiple pieces, not one. And, and I think this is just the start of it. Like, there's more optimization to be done, but it just takes time. And it takes also opportunity to be able to create more. So it really is a process, but I'm very, very thankful that I get to show in this space and that the work gets to be shared, and, the more accessible that we can make it, the more people will experience it. And that's really what it's all about.
Amazing. And so, Sofia, you started off, in the architecture world at Zaha Hadid, and you had all these ideas, and you were like, well, how do I implement these ideas quickly? Can't do it there. So you wanted to work with smaller designs, and so you started your own design studio. So how do you think about, that is another type of democratization. You enabled access for yourself, I guess, to start with. So how do you think about democratization and with the design?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because for anyone here who's an architect, we all know how much time it takes and effort and politics and budgets, etc., that projects you work on for years just don't get made. And I frankly got bored of that process, so just wanted to get things done. And I started off handmade, and then COVID hit. My studio started in COVID, so robotic fabrication, 3D printing was the best way for me to actually produce. However, I do love to play with the two genres, like a bit similar to Moral, but I don't do it myself. I collaborate with others, which is, I think, where the architect comes back. It's never just a one-man job, right? We're always a team. And I really love collaborations with other craftsmen and designers who also come from different industries. Like, for example, the Hempler, there's the seat, but it comes with a rug, which is hand-woven in Turkey by the people who weave it are UNESCO World Heritage. And that's by Studio Marmi, who are actually an artist and a filmmaker. So we all made design accessible for us through the means of different kinds of technology and craft that we now blend and merge together. And also the scalability of it. It can easily be made... Wow, that wasn't me, I think, or?
It was just to wake us up.
Yeah, you're gonna have that throughout the talk to make sure you stay awake when you least expect it. It's the visual effect. So basically, you can scale it easily as well. So especially with this fabrication technology, you can have like this necklace I'm wearing is actually a light. So it has a mother which is like 3 times bigger, and you can play with scale and you can play with materials. And that's, I think, what makes it, I think it is me. That's the democratization.
Let's do an A/B test and move on.
I think so.
Kelsey, see what
I'm
happens.
scared now.
So Kelsey, in your surrealist mobile games. You are integrating actually a lot of the designs that are featured in this exhibition today. And these are, at the very least, to understate it, sustainable use of materials and sustainable designs. How are you thinking about sort of bringing these designs into your game? Like, mobile gaming is about the most pervasive kind of medium out there. It reaches everybody. So what is your thinking there?
Yeah, I think, when Obama ran for president, he was one of the first, politicians to advertise himself in video games because he understood that video games have the ability to shape the way that we see the world. And if you look across a lot of the various titles that are out there right now, you may have heard of a game called Roblox. Roblox recently announced integrating IKEA into their game. And when you create a home, or you create, like, if you've ever played Club Penguin, or you've ever played a farming game, or you've ever played The Sims, like I grew up on The Sims, and you could place objects in your home. None of those objects had a story. And Roblox and other games like Roblox are integrating big brands and fast fashion and fast consumption because that's who's vying for the spot. But I think part of what we're doing with this event with Lizou House of Mirrors is saying, what if we were to reflect a reality in our digital world, something that allows us to continuously put our mind on an object that deserves our attention. For example, independent artists. Can we integrate and can we collaborate with independent artists? Can their work actually inform objects and materials inside of the game? Prior to this panel visual being behind us, we had a visual that reflected the sculpture that is to our right. You'll see that the vessel that is on the pedestal over in this corner is reflected right next to it onto the left. The haptic chairs, the frequency chairs, are here in the game itself. And so you can actually support independent artists. You can support designs that use, bioavailable shell waste or 3D printed sugar, and learn the story behind the object and place it and customize it in the same way you would when you had fun playing The Sims. But it's actually landing a message that I hope will give passive access to these kind of cutting edge designs and independent artists in a new medium, instead of just doing more of the same. What is the world we actually want to create together? Because it's here, it's now, it's available. We just need to habituate it. I think, going back to what Morale said earlier, this idea of, it's not a one-stop shop that all of a sudden you sit in the chair and you've reached enlightenment, but instead it's a habituation, it's a process. So if we're keeping, playing your mobile game every time you go to the toilet, for example, like, let's be real, what are you putting your mind on, and what are you exposing yourself to? What if it was art? What if it was independent creators? What if it was sustainable materials? Like, that's a reality that we can create together, and that's really what the Lizou House of Mirrors is about that reflection. Yeah.
So on that note of optimism, we're actually going to change
I'm the
gears a little
optimist,
bit.
y'all, just saying.
Cue Ben. No. We obviously, as we said, everything is also a process. It's not a straight shot. Like, Morale's work, it's constant iteration and R&D. It's a lot of work. And there's a lot of friction in trying to drive change. And so that's what we're going to talk about now in this section of the panel. So I think probably for everybody in this room, you at work have come across kind of, either you're the one pushing innovation or someone's trying to push it on you, and it just doesn't work because it doesn't work with the status quo, doesn't work with the way things are. So we want to explore some of those, some specific issues as it relates to that. First of all, in architecture, Ben, what are some of the frictions that you're seeing, especially as with regards to kind of transparency?
Well, first off, I appreciate everyone here that is using some of this technology to create access, to create like accessibility, like specific needs being met through specification. I think is great. unfortunately, like I think there are some intractable problems, like you were mentioning with architecture, that we have to address because we're going to keep doing it. And so one of the things that people talk about a lot are the design iterations. You know, you see all of the AI images, you know, melding different building types, which is fine, but I think it's not really, you know, approaching the question from the right point, which would be, you know, of kind of the purposes for why some of the buildings get made. One of the lowest funded aspects of AI on sort of a computing scale is like an alignment theory, right? We were talking earlier about how the word efficiency means a lot of different things to different people. So right now, for example, with like a massive, you know, corporate developer, corporate building firm, right? Efficiency means profit efficiency. It means like, it's very inhuman in a lot of ways. Ironically, you know, when people talk about AI being inhuman, the corporate system now is quite inhuman in the way that it operates, right? So if the AI is being programmed to create corporate efficiency to maximize profit, then it's going to do that, right? So you're going to have inhuman structures being built, you know, with like profit maximizing supply chains, like I was talking about before. But you know, if you were to align it more with the rationale of open sourced, ethical products like smaller supply chains and, you know, efficiency maxing, right? If efficiency meant sustainable efficiency, right? Efficiency for the globe, right? So it's kind of an intractable problem, right? We were talking before if, you know, and this might be some kind of anathema to some of the people working with this, but you know, if AI was to help us get away from maybe a corporate structure of building, right, of profit maximization, because a lot of these corporations were, you know, for hundreds of years have been meant to just maximize and grow. But if we could instead dial some of it into these efficiency streams, which has become hard. I know that some people have already tried to see if they could teach AI material specification systems like, I think Wolf Alfram, Gary Marcus talks about this a bit, and it's been unable to because it doesn't understand the questions being asked to it in terms of efficiency, right? So yeah, I mean, like I said before, that there's some intractable problems because I think we're not asking some of the right questions when we approach it just from a aesthetic point of view. Yeah.
Yes, it's just like misaligned incentives, I guess, and you know, and even language. So when you said efficiency, I thought business efficiency, ROI, and you were coming at it from kind of energy efficiency. I mean, even there's like, you know, one thing definitely does not necessarily align with the other. So, you know, what are the stated goals? So moving on to Kai, another kind of area of friction with generative AI, especially at the moment, is around IP, right? So on the one hand, it's like anybody can sort of create works in the style of anyone and anything. And in many cases, that actually is infringing on copyright. But like how, you know, one question is like, how does that get managed, or how does copyright law like evolve accordingly? But then the other side of it is that if you have a copyright but you use generative AI on your works, then it loses its copyright. So there's a lot going on there, and I know you think about this a lot. So would love your perspective.
Yeah. I think I'm probably gonna say some stuff that's not very popular to a lot of people, but whatever, you know. I think that it really depends on who's asking and who wants to know and what's the meaning behind your IP, right? Like IP, intellectual property, it's really, really monetized at the highest level by people that have money, that have lawyers, that have distribution, that have all these tools at their disposal. And so, you know, there's that level on an institutional level, what IP means to companies, businesses, bank accounts. And then there's what it means to probably, you know, 6 point something billion more people on the planet, right? Which is, it's really hard, you know, since the internet came out, like, I don't think people really, like 90% of everyone's IP has just been stolen and it's free. That's pre-AI, you know what I mean? So like, if you just extrapolate that on down the road, and then you have a moment like AI happens.
Add AI to that problem.
You just add AI to that problem, and you understand that AI moves at a exponential, compounded rate. It just ramps up in a very abnormal way. I don't think there's any way to catch that train. You know what I mean? So I think for people that want to create, it's really important to really understand what this technology does for you, right? And what the technology does for artists and independent thinkers, talent, creators, which we all are. Everybody is. You know what I mean? It really gives you it's the new, like, AI and these technical tools. It's really like a new form of, it's like a new patron of the arts. If you really break it down and strip it down and understand like what AI does for you, you can, if you do enough R&D, come up with a whole new pipeline and understanding of what your workflow is going to be for the future. And that's really impactful to independent people, right? And so as it pertains to your IP, you were never going to make money on that shit anyway because you don't have enough. I'm just saying, like, a lot of people just don't have enough money to protect their IP, right? Not to mention, let's just take the music business for instance. The music business, which I was a part of, in my early 20s, I was 24 years old in the music business, as a manager, A&R, executive producer, kind of young creative, but I didn't buy music. You know what I mean? I'm a Napster baby, right? So I'm like sitting in these rooms, I'm sitting in these conference rooms with all these 40-year-olds, and they're like, yo, we gotta sue these kids, we gotta like get the FBI involved and all this stuff, and I'm looking around, I'm like, shit, I'm about to go to jail, you know what I'm saying? Like, seriously, I really, really thought that, actually, right? And then I'm looking at all the charts and I'm like, man, I'm, like this whole business is down 30% this year, right? And music was one of the things that could be exchanged really quickly. Like once file swapping, came onto the scene, it's like the MP3 file, that was what you could swap out really early, right? So you got all these kids hosting FTP sites, everybody's downloading stuff, and so right away, you're getting punctured as a huge industry, and you're talking about the music business, like multi-billions of dollars and lawyers and people that want to just like make all the money in the world, and now they're all the way, they don't even own their own streaming platforms. They don't even own their own distribution. That's a whole music industry. So it's really hard for me to think about it from that perspective, as far as like what IP should mean to everybody. I think what should mean something to everyone is you growing your ability, and which is there's a new talent attribute. I really believe that building community is an actual talent. It's an actual talent. It needs to be taught. It needs people need to go to school and like learn about building community. Everyone says that word community. Everybody says that word culture. But like, how do you engage? How do you create? How do you know what I mean? How do you involve yourself in that? And that's the most important thing, because if you could create that trust bubble as it pertains to whatever you're creating, then people are going to buy and participate and support. And so I think that's what I think about IP.
So well said. And I think kind of in my world, I sort of worked with and been approached by startups that have these patents on things. And it's like, okay, that's great. But what I've seen is unless you act on that patent, unless you either build the community or build the product, build the consumer base, then you don't really have a moat. You can't really protect it. But thank you for that. That was so well put. So Manoj, another kind of really like thorny or interesting area when we think about AI is AI as it pertains to authenticity and kind of how the role of authenticity in the era of AI. And actually, I was just on a call this morning and we were talking about it with Dan, who's in the audience here, and we felt like that authenticity becomes even more important in the era of AI. But how do you basically like hold the two together? How do the two work together?
I live in LA. Anyone that goes to Burning Man is a meditation teacher. Like, literally every September, October, they come back. They've had a spiritual awakening. So they've been at training for the last 8 days. So, I think it's a really interesting space, and I've been talking about it with one of my best friends a lot lately, because we're two grown men and we started dancing. Just like, we're not dancers, so we're like, let's start dancing. And we're learning this really interesting form of dance, which is really, for us, an act of starting to build our somatic intelligence and our embodied intelligence. I feel like with the advent of AI and how that's growing, we're going to become very cerebrally intelligent, but we're going to disconnect ourselves completely from our bodies. And so we might even get to that stage where, when we have a certain feeling that's uncomfortable, instead of feeling it, instead of being curious about it, we'll chat GPT it. Like, what am I feeling? Tell me. So it's a really interesting space. And then you think about the people that are now in this space capitalizing on that, whether it's teachers or coaches and all of that. And I think of it as this analogy one of my teachers first gave me. He talked about a bread knife. He's like, oh, the bread knife can be beautiful. It can spread this beautiful grass-fed butter all over some gluten-free bread. He was from LA, by the way. Or it can be used to harm you. Sorry for hating on LA, anyone.
He's moving to New York.
I'm moving to New York, by the way. But it could also be used to harm someone. And I feel like AI, what it can do, it can really help us synthesize information that has been so hard for us to access since the dawn of time from some of the greatest teachers in the world. And it can help us reimagine them in a context that is applicable and accessible to so many of us. But those inputs have to be first received and then delivered through a lens of someone that is embodied, someone that has context within that space and can deliver it in a way where there's some ethics behind it as well. Otherwise, this space, the wellness space, is just going to be capitalized. It probably already is to an extent. It'll be, yeah, exactly. Yeah, say it with your chest, go.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah. And I think just in a sea of just so much content, people are going to be looking for their trusted brands, gurus. Like, that is going to be, if you actually can deliver that trust and kind of have that connection, that's going to be the biggest curator of all. So we're actually going to move into the next section of our panel, which is painting a future vision. So rather than asking kind of what's going to happen next, which can be quite open-ended, I'm going to ask each panelist, starting with Ben. We'll give you a slightly longer timeline because construction and architecture, as we've said, does take a little bit longer. So in 8 years' time, what will a construction site look like?
Sure. So I haven't worked on a construction site in a decade, probably. I mean, after some of this conversation, maybe I should go back just so I could work with my hands and stop thinking about all this for a little bit because I'm going a bit off the wall. But yeah, I think that the better way that I think about it maybe is that a construction site in the future should hopefully be not viewed just as like a solo building going up, right? Like I was visiting a studio the other day, and they were conceptualizing AI as something that could look at a building with how it interacts with everything around it, right? So people make a bunch of hay about public spaces and then put one bench and paint it a bit, and no one actually wants to sit there. But if if there is open source data like we've been talking about, it's made available, they can't ignore it, and we're like, okay, these are some things the computer has punched the number to make this building interact well with the environment, to help the plants grow around it, to give light to other buildings around it, to make the air feel better, to help the flow of people, just to make it a part of the city instead of just like a big testament to someone's wealth, right? So that's another approach thing, but I think that if we, are graceful with ourselves and allow it to be a tool and not the teacher, like Manoj was saying, we can definitely build better cities with it. I think that's my hope.
It's actually a really interesting concept, buildings that are testaments to someone's wealth, if that kind of becomes not cool, and have buildings that are testaments to somebody's vision in a different way. And I guess, games like Le Zoo, that's sort of the goal, is to actually change the tide and the bias of how people think, to help them kind of nudge them towards thinking a bit differently.
New SimCity,
Yeah, right? SimCity, yeah. Yeah, I think...
Actually, I'm going to keep going down.
Yes,
Sorry,
we're going to go that
was just
way.
A little unscripted piece.
Yes. I was like, ooh, that's let's catch the ball. Yeah.
So Sofia, what do you envision buildings? Because you've talked about how you're starting small, with these designs, because you can actually, execute and achieve all of this progress on a smaller scale. But your ultimate goal is to actually influence how buildings are constructed. So, in the next 5 years, tell us about a building.
I think 5 years is very ambitious because even at this small scale, to give a quick example, I work in a very tight network of like the best of digital fabrication. The software engineers do prototyping for NASA and Formula One, material scientists across Europe. We're all pushing the same, we have the same ethos, we have the same goal. And even a small-scale product like the Hempla, it has a brother made of 3D printed hemp. That material did not exist. It took 2 years to just develop the material to be printable because the fibers clog the nozzle, etc. There's so much research involved in getting even the tiniest bit made and then scale it. And actually, speaking of the NASA, ISS has a recycling facility in outer space to recycle the astronauts' plastic waste, and then they turn it into filament, and they have a robot there that prints in zero gravity. So
And you're using that.
I'm using that. I have it at home in my zero gravity.
Okay, well, I'm glad I asked that naive question because that painted a picture of how far away we are from that happening. So a follow-up question to that, when do you think we will see the kinds of methods that you are employing in your designs today in buildings?
I think a big, big factor of that are regulations. Like, literally, this is what took me away from architecture a bit, because I got bored of regulations. It's literally governments and regulations across every country has different regulations, and as long as these things are not set in place, they cannot happen at bigger scale.
Nice. Okay, so morale. In the next 5 years, in 5 years' time, what will a sensorial experience be like?
Well, I don't think it will be an experience that you go to. I think you'll be living in it. So it's slowly but surely popping up in our homes, on wearables, in our cars, in every place that we go. So I really believe that we'll be living in that sensorial experience more and more, which I think is really exciting. And I really hope that we continue to tap into the feeling within that and really like going on that inward journey, which it feels quite disconnected to talk about it. But I think that when you experience it, then you can kind of like understand what that means. But I really do believe that our whole life is moving into a sensory space. We feel and we experience through the senses, but utilizing tech and the way that tech is going to continue to expand within our worlds, I believe that that's just going to be everyday life. It's just going to be a normal experience, whatever that may mean.
Well, I'm into it. Kai, in 5 years' time, what sort of things will creators be doing with AI? What sort of experience can we expect?
I think everyone is going to be subject to. Shit sounds crazy, but subject to artificial general intelligence (AGI), and so that's another exponential compounded situation that I think put in everyone's hands. Everyone's going to be a content creator. Everyone's going to custom make whatever they want, whatever movie you want to see, whatever meta-human you want talking to you about whatever it is. And so I think that people will own, I guess, IP within their trust bubbles of different characters that they own from their creative essence, them being able to generate, this trust in these different communities and be able to extrapolate that through metahumans, through content, through whatever, and then also package that up and let your community play with that and then be able to make their own films, their own movies within your creative essence that you own as your IP, I guess, in that bubble. So it's gonna get crazy. You know what I mean?
And how, in that landscape, when anyone can do anything, what will be, you mentioned community before, but what will be people's moat? What will people be striving to do to win in that environment?
I think everybody will be striving to win credits in a giant video game. That is
The game of life.
Yeah, like honestly, like I think that everyone's kind of hooked right now on like everybody got a nice hit and dose of this AI shit, and I think it's really dangerous. Everyone thinking that that's gonna last forever and be put in everyone's hands at a certain level. And people that have money are going to have access to a certain God level access to AI, and then everyone else is. What's interesting about that is I think this isn't just like there's 10 companies that make AI anymore. Now the cat's out of the bag. So everyone is making their own GPTs or creating their own models, and so there's so much talent. Like if you go on Discord in like the Forum, which is one of the early AI communities that was making Stable Diffusion 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and a lot of their open source code and white papers were stolen. Not stolen because it's open source, but it was taken from the community and built, and it helped build a lot of the more commercial level companies. There's 30,000 AI developers in there, and if you go in there and you ask questions, it's like, oh, right, like they're making stuff that's not commercially available. And it's the same. That's just internet culture. That's the way the internet goes. Everyone's on deck. Everybody's on board. Everybody has the tools, and the talent's outside the walls of the institutions and the big companies. So you're gonna see whatever you want. Whatever you want, you're gonna be able to have. It's gonna be available to you, and then you just now are figuring out decision-wise where your heart is gonna go, where your creative sensibility is gonna go. And it's going to be about the multi-truths out here. There's not going to be true and false, which we're already close to that right now. It's just multi-truths. So yeah, everybody's going to get to play in their own world of truth.
But then in the end, I guess it's what actually connects with other people. Because at the end of the day, it's about the people, right? I mean, there's a world where everyone's, there'll be an inflood of agents, AI agents,
Well, I mean, you're
and
making
pseudo people.
metahumans, right?
Yeah.
But one thing though, but you mentioned like the kind of like the God level tier stuff. It still does take a ton of like servers and space to like run super high processes, right? Which will like be harder to.
And Elon Musk is doing what it took 5 years to do as far as creating supercomputers and connecting them all. It takes like a couple years to do that. He did it in 19 days, like a month ago.
How many billions?
Let's just say AGI happens in 4 years, which they're already saying it's happening next year. There's no one. These are country. This is like this is a government level situation. So it's like money's not an actual thing to governments. They just print the shit. You know what I mean? It's just print money. You throw it over here. You make all the computers do the thing. Like every country's in an arms race for AGI, and so it's just like bigger than It's just one of those things where we're like sitting around talking about this stuff, and it's like we'll be playing with this much of it, and it'll give us everything. It's moving that fast. It's moving. It's that impactful. And again, I think it's just important. It's not to be scary. It's just more about like. That's why I always focus on like, yo, how am I taking care of me? Shit, how am I making sure I can make sure my family's good, and like I'm making something that's good and it's gonna help people in my own way, and like really focusing on, getting the oxygen mask and applying it to you first before you hand it over. And I think that's kind of like my thinking about it. Everyone kind of like figure out how this is going to work for you and how you're going to create, and how you now have all these different options where you don't have to wait for, the technology again is like a new patron of the arts, distribution, pipeline, all the things that like it would take, someone raising lots of capital to like go engage with different companies and like make something. It just shrunk that down. And so that's the opportunity, I think, for like the general public.
And at the same time, I think it will create a lot of need for things like grounding, such as vibrational designs in our homes to, counteract that. Because at the end of the day, we'll be hopefully ultimately building what we want for society. And so I think that is the guardrail that we will be operating within. It's not just tech companies just going to be making tech for tech's sake. Like in the end, there will be, I hope, and I'm playing for some, guardrails and moderation around that. But a great conversation starter for after this panel. So moving on to Kelsey. In 5 years' time, what will a mobile game experience be to most people?
Yeah, I think kind of piggybacking off of what Kai was sharing about, if you can create anything, then tapping into who you are and what unique capability you can bring to the world becomes exponentially more important. And I think as Morale was saying about that idea of like going inward and coming back to yourself, it's not like hyper-individualization. It's not that, okay? I think that in the last 5 years, we've seen sort of the bastardization of that, where it's like, self-care and this and that, get, me and mine kind of thing. And I actually think that there's nuance there, which is it's not about me. It's about, do I even know myself? Do I even know who I am? Do I even know what I want to create? If I handed you all the tools on the table, would you even know where to start, And so our game, the tagline is, the only way out is within. And I think that part of that process, or part of what I think is going to happen with the gaming space, is that we're going to move out of, especially mobile gaming, is we're going to move out of casino culture. Like, guys talking about like, oh, they're just printing money. Well, it's like more gold coins, right? Like, go capture them. Like, dissociate. Like, forget about what you're supposed to be doing and go play over here. And I think that we're reaching that point where post-COVID, where folks had this like inner 2 years of 3 years or however long it was as a days, of inner reflection of like, do I even like myself? Do I even like my friends? Do I even like my partner, right? Like all of a sudden it was like fast reflection. And I think that the gaming experiences that are available to us, especially in these days and times, like, up until this point, we've done hyper-realistic first-person shooter, hyper-realistic, war simulation, and that if you look around, it's like, well, wait, did we just create the reality that we've been kind of putting our brains on? And so I think as we move into the future, when we think about gaming, as we move into a future where all the tools are on the table, where everything's available, getting in touch with what is your unique capability so that you can say, I am that, and that you can say, you are that, and I have a little bit of that in me too, and you can get to this point where you understand what is your unique contribution to the fabric of reality, because we're all here on Earth, I'm the optimist, right, but we're all here on Earth for a purpose, whatever that is, it's being, and it's not trying to do, or we're not human doings, we're human beings. And I think the gaming experience of the future, I don't think is only about taking your mind somewhere outside of yourself. But I think it's a way of having a lot of fun playing with yourself. Like, oh, damn, like, I guess I am a little aggressive. Like, oh, I am a little bit of a determined person who just won't stop till I get to a level 100, But you can start to have that reflection, kind of in the same way that people were using ChatGPT to like roast their IG. I don't know if anyone has seen that. But it's similar, right? Like if you're playing a personalized game that's playing back with you, you can start to have fun and kind of laugh at yourself a little bit while simultaneously understanding, well, what is the path I'm taking, and what am I creating? If carte blanche, I could do it all.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. In an age of AI where you can create anything at any moment, the thing that makes you unique is you, that you are a human, that you have a lived experience, that you can grow, accumulate wisdom. And so there will be a need for these tools that help us do that. So moving on to Manoj, in 5 years' time, what will the wellness experience look like?
It's going to be insufferable. I can already see it. Everyone's going to be enlightened. No, I think for the longest time, people were trying to cultivate this quality of enlightenment, right? Trying to get somewhere else. I think the future is going to be, can I feel more human? And what does that look like? What is it like to grapple with the big existential questions in life? What is it like to be in discomfort? What is it like to long? What is it like to feel heartbreak? And I think the future is going to be trying to get in touch with that more and more and more and more. With that being said, I think there's a rising tide where basic wellness, self-care will be advantageous, or people have more access to a therapist than they probably ever have had previously. Not saying that's good or bad, but it's just the reality of people that can't afford that, right? And wellness practices have also historically been co-opted. They've been taken over. They've been facilitated by the rich and for people that can't for people that have the money to be able to do that. And so the future is going to be a double-edged sword. Like, yes, I think we'll have a baseline level of self-awareness. Maybe we'll feel good. Maybe there's more self-care. But ultimately, I keep coming back to the same question that brought me to this practice almost 20 years ago, is that how can I feel more human? Like, how can I understand myself more? I don't think that question is going to change.
Yeah, and I think, given some of the builders of these AGIs or powerful AIs, depending on who you talk to, what the terminology is that they prefer, but Dario Amodei, who is the CEO of Anthropic, which is the biggest competitor to OpenAI, predicts that what he calls powerful AI, which is a much more relatable term, not borrowing from science fiction, will be with us in 5 years' time. And if all goes well, it will be the best thing that's ever happened to humanity, including there will be no more diseases. Like, it will be a cure to mental illness. There will be a cure to a lot of the things there will be a cure to cancer. Like, if there's a lot that needs to go right for this to happen. But in that light, then wellness could be a lot more about just, getting in touch with your humanity and who you are, because you're kind of freed to focus on that even more in a good way.
I'm actually curious, like, is that good though? Like, is it good to not feel bad all the time? I personally don't think it is. Like, my down moments have been the creative juice that helped me create things in the world. I think it comes more down to this existential question, more maybe philosophical, like, can we be with the uncomfortable experiences in our life? And one of those uncomfortable experiences is not knowing, because we always want to know.
Someone asked me as an icebreaker in a round table the other day, if I could, would I have a neurochip implanted into my brain to stop me from ever making a mistake again? And I literally had this most physical, visceral revulsion at this idea, because that's the one thing that's like, no, I need to make mistakes. I need to grow. I need to experience. Like, that is literally what I have. So I'm very with you on that. Okay, so we are going to wrap up shortly. And we're going to end with some final words from each of our panelists. Just something short and to the point and practical for this audience here, just to wrap up tonight's discussion. So, Ben.
Oh, shit. I would, just simply logistics over aesthetics when thinking about AI.
I see AI as a tool that can help us. Like, just quickly jumping on the medical wagon here, that AI can actually simulate, like with me in the fabrication process, it simulates the errors, it simulates the print process and indicates errors, less prototyping, less waste. And it does the same with the human body. It finds cancer cells. So you don't actually need to do animal testing or human drug testing to that extent. So it's applicable on both human as well as the design level. So I think as long as you use it as a useful tool, just like a hammer, it can help us all.
As we're talking about duality here, I do think life is about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So it's all about experiencing things. So maybe just don't be too scared of the tech and the AI and what's happening, and rather just be playful with it, because it's going to go on. You're just going to have fun. So just enjoy it.
Yeah. I think that being smart and intellectual has been automated, and that moving forward, a lot of the things that kind of like common theme with all of this stuff is just more like, creativity. Everyone's creative. I hate when people say like, oh, I'm not a creative. It's like, that's crazy. Like, close your eyes and think of an apple. You know what I mean? Like, and think of like an alien apple. You know what I mean? You're gonna see something different, and I think that that is what is the most human thing, is like creativity, culture, community. Those things haven't been automated yet, and I would just like implore everybody to lean into those things.
I think to your point, it's like intellectual knowledge is going to be commodified. Like, so great, you know that bit of that fact, that factoid. But I think that kind of whether it's reconnecting with the human experience or talking about aliens. I feel like
let's go.
Yeah, right.
Let's go,
Like,
now.
let's talk about aliens. I think that it's not only about connecting with the human body, the physical body, that's one facet, but also connecting with this kind of, this knowing, this je ne sais quoi, this wisdom that is in your heart of hearts, and trusting yourself to play, trusting yourself to, great, if I can get the knowledge, if I can understand the efficiencies, if I can understand where things fall apart, you know, if the knowledge is commodified, where does the wisdom sit? How can you tap into your inner wisdom? People, the last thing I'll say is, like, you know, a lot of times friends will say, like, you know, a coincidence just happened. Like, you wouldn't believe what just happened. This synchronicity happened, or I just ran into so-and-so. And I'm like, why don't you believe that that's the way it's meant to be? Like, it's actually weirder when it doesn't happen like that. Like, you know, and that's when the antenna should be like, wait a minute, you know, things aren't syncing. And so I think getting to that point of trusting when things are syncing, you know, and trusting your inner wisdom, knowing that it's not about smarts, it's not about pedigree, it's not about all the money, but it's about, are you really tapped into your inner wisdom, like Ghost in the Shell style of, like, let's go to mind comms, baby, because, like, we gotta sink in, you know, we gotta plug in. So that's my thought, is like, let's go to mind comms.
You don't need to know all the answers. Instead, fall in love with the questions.
Manoj! Before, Natalie, before you close, one logistical thing, because I know folks might just get up right after she speaks. It would be really incredibly helpful if, when you get up, you could fold your chair and simply sit it aside on the edge of the wall, and there will be chair fairies who will come and sweep the chairs away so that we can reset the gallery space and everyone can enjoy the public opening of the show. And as a special thank you to all of the artists who are showing their work, it's worthy of taking note, it's worthy of trying, it's worthy of being curious. So I hope that you can experience it at the end of this. So yes.
And have a lot of space to continue discussions based on anything that you've heard on this panel tonight. I think we've covered a lot of ground. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared. These panelists have been incredible, and you audience have been incredible as well, so attentive. And we are at the hour mark, and really looking forward to continuing the conversation after the panel.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Natalie.